Hello, my name is Steven Zeiner. I'm a co-owner and shareholder evangelist for Stronghold Digital Mining. When I became a shareholder, I decided I couldn't stay on the sideline. I had to get involved. I'm not paid by the company. I'm not paid by any hedge fund. This is something I'm doing because I believe very strongly in the mission and purpose of this company. Okay, there's going to be a lot to talk about in this particular video. This morning, Q4 2022 results came out, or at least a sneak preview of those results came out. There's a lot to go over, there's a lot of detail, and there's a lot of information. So let's do it in a very slow, calm, and methodical manner. Let's get started. First, Stronghold Digital Mining generated approximately $23 million in revenue and an estimated $5 million of adjusted EBITDA during the fourth quarter of 2022. Now, adjusted EBITDA. Well, the EBITDA part, right, that's just a bunch of letters, okay? EBITDA. It's essentially a widely used measure, which basically means, and when I say a widely used measure, I mean a widely used measure of corporate profitability, okay? And it basically means earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, okay? I know that's a mouthful. It could be a lot to take in, but let's move on. Let's talk about what segments our revenue came from. Okay, so first, energy sales. About $14 million of our approximately $23 million in revenue came specifically from energy sales, which means selling electricity to the PJM grid. Now, about $8 million of our roughly $23 million in revenue came from Bitcoin mining operations. So that basically means, hey, we're sending electricity to our data centers. Our data centers have Bitcoin mining machines in there. We're producing Bitcoin, and then we're selling that Bitcoin in the open market because at this stage of the game, we have expenses that we need to cover. So we're not necessarily holding Bitcoin for any lengthy amount of time. We're turning it into fiat and turning it into revenue, which we need at this stage of our development. So about $8 million came from Bitcoin mining. Finally, about $1 million of that revenue, of the roughly $23 million in Q4 2022, came from capacity sales. I'll get into that in another video. For now, just think of that as a little bit of extra money that comes in as a result of our relationship with the PJM grid. Okay? Let's leave it at that, at least for now. Now, Q4 2022 featured two extremes. In November, we had really depressed Bitcoin prices. I mean, they were like in the $15,000 to $16,000 range for a good portion of the month. So that naturally translated into an environment where we weren't going to really be making a lot of money mining Bitcoin. So that's one extreme. The second extreme was that in December, we had record, and I truly mean record high PJM grid prices. And I think it's fair to say that Stronghold's vertically integrated business model, which basically combines power generation, right, that we can then, we generate electricity at our two power plants, Scrubgrass out in western Pennsylvania, Panther Creek here in eastern Pennsylvania. We could turn around, sell that electricity to the PJM grid. So that's one aspect of our business model, right? So power generation that we sell to the grid, and then Bitcoin mining, which, as I alluded to a moment ago, is the process of sending electricity to our data centers. We have two data centers. One's at Scrubgrass, the other's at Panther Creek, and using that electricity to mine Bitcoin. Well, those two ways of generating revenue, in combination with the fact that we own our data centers, we own our power plants, right? That means that we have a lot of flexibility, and it means that we can deliver tremendous value not only to shareholders, but to the people that we serve as part of the PJM grid. What transpired at the very end of December, okay, of 2022, it was remarkable, okay? There was essentially a moment in time, beginning on about December 23rd, 2022, where Stronghold Digital Mining halted all Bitcoin operations. We did not mine a single Bitcoin, okay? And instead, we diverted 100%, or as much as we could, right, of our electricity to the PJM grid as a result of a grid emergency. Now, this is something that I spoke about and documented in real time. And in fact, I'll put a link to that video in the description of this video, just in case you're not familiar with what I'm referring to. In a nutshell, temperatures were extremely cold. There was a lot of bad weather that affected the PJM grid. The potential existed for the grid to essentially have to go to rolling blackouts. I'm exceptionally proud of the fact that Stronghold Digital Mining was able to curtail all Bitcoin mining operations and instead help stabilize the grid. That's not just a theoretical gratitude or a philosophical gratitude. I live in the PJM PPL portion of the PJM grid. And as a result of Stronghold's efforts, I did not lose any electricity. I was able to keep the heat going. I mean, it kind of was a life and death situation. There are a lot of people who sadly lost their lives as a result of the inclement weather and the frigid cold temperatures that struck a big portion of the Mid-Atlantic, New England area. And I'm exceptionally proud of the fact that Stronghold played a very constructive role in helping to stabilize the grid during a really, really difficult time for the grid. So Stronghold Digital Mining remains committed to supporting the PJM grid, which, again, from my perspective, is not only aligned with maximizing shareholder value, but it's, from a practical perspective, really helpful in keeping the lights on, especially when you need it most. Let's talk about cost of power. So in the fourth quarter of 2022, and now here at the beginning of Q1 2023, sorry, I sort of tripped over my words there. Now at the beginning of Q1 2023, we began, meaning the company Stronghold began, to really see the amazing benefits of all the mission critical investments that were made in Q3 2022. This is back in like September of last year, as it relates to operations and maintenance. Stronghold continues to believe that it will achieve a net cost of power of between $45 and $50 a megawatt hour beginning right now in Q1 2023. And that's really, really awesome to hear. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about beneficial use ash. There's this little joke within the Twitter Stronghold Digital Mining sort of like conversation space where a buddy of mine out there said, "Hey, Steven, maybe you'll get a bag of beneficial use ash, as thanks for all of the time, effort, and energy you put into promoting this company. I'm not looking for any remuneration from the company, be it financial or be it through, bags of beneficial use ash. Look, I benefit when we all benefit, right? As a shareholder, when the stock price goes up, I benefit, as do you, as do all shareholders. So when it comes to beneficial use ash, in 2022, the company generated about $300,000 from the sale of beneficial use ash. So what is that? Beneficial use ash is basically an industrial byproduct that is the result of our waste coal purpose-built power plants. Waste coal goes in, and waste coal, by the way, isn't what you would think of as coal. It's really just this leftover stuff from coal mining in the state of Pennsylvania that was fairly recklessly just left behind. That stuff leaches into like the water table. It's a disaster. It's really an environmental catastrophe in many ways. So we have in Pennsylvania these purpose-built facilities called waste coal plants, which are able to utilize waste coal as a feedstock, so to speak, for a power plant. We are able to turn that into energy. We do so in a way that's incredibly nice, right? It's not just, hey, let's light a match to this stuff and burn it into the open atmosphere. No, this is a very, very controlled and very environmentally friendly process where the overwhelming majority of the bad stuff that's in the waste coal is removed. So it's not just going straight into the air. And by the way, there are waste coal piles like right now as I'm creating this video that are just smoldering and like on fire. It's an unhealthy thing. The sooner we can tackle this problem in a practical, meaningful way, the better. And so that's what we're doing. And I'm very proud of that. I live in this state. I drink the water. I breathe the air. I'm sensitive, right, to some of the criticism regarding carbon dioxide being released into the atmosphere. guess what? That's going to be released into the atmosphere no matter what, because these piles, as I alluded to a moment ago, they do spontaneously combust and they just burn uncontrolled. It's really a nightmare. So anyway, the good news is that we're able to take this waste coal, we turn it into electricity, and then we can derive something called beneficial use ash. And thankfully, right, this is something that now we can actually make a little bit of revenue from. So it's like really a win-win-win all the way around situation. For 2023, again, don't bake this into any model or make any assumptions. Let's just pretend nothing will come of this, but the potential exists to maybe generate about $1 million from selling beneficial use ash in 2023. It looks like we clocked in about 300,000 last year in 2022, maybe about $1 million this year. So, hey, as it relates to beneficial use ash, it's beneficial in multiple ways. For us, right, it's beneficial from the perspective that it generates some extra revenue. So that's a good thing. Okay, let's talk about MinerVa. So as of March 21st, 2023, our friends over at MinerVa Semiconductor have fulfilled about 85% of the order that Stronghold originally placed with them back, I think, in like April of 2021. We've gotten cash refunds, MinerVa miners, and other leading third-party manufactured miners from MinerVa, leaving around 2,300 miners that are left to be delivered. So I think it's important to point out that we, if I'm not mistaken, completely have taken the position that, look, let's just pretend we're not going to get anything from MinerVa, okay? Don't make any assumptions in models. Let's not make any assumptions, regarding anything really. Let's just pretend it's an investment gone bad. The good news is, right? Let's to paraphrase a comment I heard in one of the earnings calls back last year. Hey, if you hypnotize me, though, we're getting something more than nothing, right? And that's the good news. But as it relates to MinerVa, let's just keep pretending we're not going to get anything, right? But the good news is we are getting something. And what's even better news, and this is something that's of particular interest to some in the community who are kind of concerned about, hey, well, are the miners that we're getting from MinerVa, are they living up to manufacturer specifications and stuff like that? Well, I'll tell you what, thanks to a lot of the engineering cleverness of our engineers at the company, as well as the data center teams, we've been able to really do what needed to be done to mostly get all of these miners up and running and operating pretty much, fully consistent with, manufacturer specifications. So slowly but surely, MinerVa continues to deliver, and the miners themselves are, we're able to work with them, get as much value as we can out of them. So that's all really good news as it relates to MinerVa. Okay, let's talk about recent events and exposures. Now, when we think about exposure, we think about like illness, right? I don't want to get sick. I don't want to be exposed to something that's going to make me unwell. Well, thankfully, Stronghold Digital Mining has had no direct exposure to Celsius, First Republic Bank, FTX, Signature Bank, Silicon Valley Bank, or Silvergate Capital. So I'm really happy that Stronghold is going to continue to be super careful and manage its exposure as best it really can to some of these third-party counterparties, essentially, and you never know. You look, there's only so much you could do to play it safe. Really grateful. The company's acknowledging, hey, we didn't, step on any landmines, and they're being vigilant. So that's good news. Let's keep it up. Okay, so let's talk about what happened in the stock market today. At about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, if you look at all of the stocks within the Bitcoin mining ecosystem, you'll see that they all took a nosedive. For example, here's a chart of Marathon Digital Holdings. Here's another chart of Riot Blockchain. And here's a chart of Stronghold Digital Mining. Okay, so as you can see, it's not just those three companies. A lot of companies took a nosedive. And that correlates with the Federal Reserve deciding to raise interest rates by 25 basis points. From my perspective, without getting into a lengthy economic dissertation, I'm convinced that we're probably going to be going into what I'd describe as an easing environment. Okay, we're interest rates are likely to start going down, and where quantitative easing, of course, none of this will be labeled as quantitative easing, but where a version of quantitative easing is going to take place. These are all very positive things for Stronghold Digital Mining. In fact, I looked in the after hours. Yeah, Bitcoin was down a bit today, but it was already regaining ground. And I expect it to continue gaining ground once the market fully digests that, hey, wait a minute, inflation is nowhere near under control. We're already talking about the end of rates going any higher, or at least, the Fed raising rates any higher. And yet we see sort of like, with one hand, the Fed is raising rates. With the other hand, it appears to be engaging in a version of quantitative easing. And we've got a potential banking crisis that's unfolding. And, inflation's still kind of out of control. So these are all very positive macroeconomic tailwinds for not only Bitcoin, but for Stronghold Digital Mining. I want to talk about valuation. When we think about valuation, there are a couple different ways to look at that. We generated for not just Q4 2022, but for full year 2022, about $105 million in revenue, okay? $105 million in revenue. Our market cap right now is about 30 some odd million dollars. Let that sink in for a second. Revenue, right? Looking in the rearview mirror of about 105 million, market cap of about 30 something million. Assuming we replicate that level of revenue in 2023, okay, we're trading at substantially less than one-time sales, okay? To me, that's kind of crazy. All right, be that as it may, let's now look at adjusted EBITDA, okay? For Q4 2022, we already know it was about 4.8 million. That's the number that was released, the specific number. When you then compute, right, Q1, Q2, Q3, put it all together along with Q4, okay, total adjusted EBITDA for 2022, okay, was about $4.6 million. Not that great. About so we're trading about 7.5 times adjusted EBITDA for 2022, based on our current market cap. 7 times. Okay. Going forward, beginning with Q1 2023, and then Q2 and Q3 and Q4, I'm looking for at least $20 million in adjusted EBITDA. Okay? Positive EBITDA. So if you apply that same multiple of about 7.5 to about $20 million, you do the math. See where I'm going with this? Our company, the valuation right now is just ridiculous from my perspective. Totally ridiculous. I'm cautiously optimistic that when we have our formal investor presentation on Wednesday, March 29th, that, when Wall Street asks their questions and our friends in management provide responses, and, maybe there's going to be a point there where Wall Street, not only just in terms of like the, our analysts, right, our friends on Wall Street, right, who cover the company, but maybe Wall Street as a whole will start to appreciate that, hey, wait a minute, this company is being priced as if though it were literally going out of business. And that's not happening, right? I mean, what's going on with our valuation? It's ridiculous. So I'm anticipating there will be a re-rating of our stock. Now, when's that exactly going to happen? I wish I had a crystal ball. I think, videos like this and talking about it, what's going on Twitter, what's going on at the investor presentation, we're going to do, we're hoping to have a virtual shareholder meetup at the very end of this month. Again, this can't just be our friends in management. It can't just be me. I think this is an all of us, right? All of us who are shareholders of this company are co-owners of this company. It's incumbent upon all of us to really, be comfortable talking about the virtues of what this company is all about. the valuation is just wackadoodle. I don't even know if that's a formal English phrase, but it's wackadoodle. And it's frustrating. And I feel the frustration amongst a lot of fellow shareholders. I get it. But I'm not concerned with, really with what happened today in the market. I'm really focused instead on saying, hey, we've got a macroeconomic environment that's perfect for Bitcoin, and it's only going to get better. We have a macroeconomic environment that, as a result of being positive for Bitcoin, is going to be positive for us, because one of our main revenue drivers is Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin priced in dollars per megawatt hour. If we're producing electricity and we're not selling it to the grid, well, then we're sure as heck using it to generate Bitcoin, right? So the higher the price of Bitcoin, the more potential revenue we could generate, the more potential adjusted EBITDA we could generate, okay? Our stock does sometimes trade in sympathy with the rest of the market, and that's what I believe happened today. But there will come a point where we need to be re-rated. I mean, we're just, it's not enough to just trade in sympathy with the market. We need to actually just be valued at a company that's not, again, the assumption seems to be that we're declaring bankruptcy at the end of the week, and we're so far from that. We really are, at least in my opinion. So I'm not concerned about the gyrations of the stock market. I know today's a little bit of a setback, but you know what? Let's see what happens tomorrow. Let's see how we finish out this week. And let's see what happens once we get through our investor presentation. And hopefully the market has more of an opportunity to really reflect and think about, hey, wait a minute, how are we valuing Stronghold Digital Mining again? This doesn't make any sense, because you know what? It doesn't. And so I do believe our shares have to get up, have to move up in price just to reflect that, some modicum of a real world valuation, because right now we're pretty darn far from that. Okay, this was great. I'm really excited about the investor presentation. So let's keep counting down until then. But hopefully this covers a lot of what was released today, which I think was really, really awesome. I'm so excited and happy about what we learned today about Q4 2022. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow.